Her small hands trembled as they clutched the golden locket. Rain streaming down her face, mixing with tears she couldn't stop. Her voice broke with every desperate word. "They took my mama. They took Mama Ilara. They said she's going to die." The mahogany-paneled study fell silent. Glasses stopped mid-pour. Conversations died mid-threat. Every armed man in that room turned, but the man she had chosen, the one person in all of Alpine, New Jersey she believed could save her mother, was no ordinary stranger. He was Vance the Architect Sterling, the most feared Mafia boss on the East Coast, and what he did next would force him to choose between his empire and his soul. Stay with me until the end, because this story will shatter everything you thought you knew about power, loyalty, and the price of redemption. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Now, let's get into it. It's a rain-soaked Thursday evening in Alpine, New Jersey, autumn of 2024. The Sterling estate sits behind 15-foot walls and surveillance systems that could track a mosquito at 50 yards. Inside the main house, the study smells of aged leather, Cuban cigars, and decisions that have destroyed entire organizations. This isn't just wealth. This is power with teeth. Vance Sterling's domain. Every staff member knows to knock twice and wait. Every business associate understands the unspoken rules. You arrive on time, you speak when spoken to, and you never bring problems without solutions. And you absolutely never interrupt when the architect is conducting business. Vance sits behind his desk like a judge presiding over a sentencing. At 48, he carries himself with the controlled precision of a man who has never made an unplanned move. Sharp cheekbones, neatly trimmed beard showing hints of gray, and eyes the color of winter steel that miss nothing. The small X-shaped tattoo beneath his left eye catches the lamplight, rumored to mark each life he's taken personally. Tonight, those cold eyes are fixed on three men seated across from him. Accountants who thought they could skim 15% off a Sterling syndicate shipment without consequences. They were learning how wrong they were. The conversation flows in low, measured tones. Numbers are discussed with surgical precision. Territories are mentioned. Solutions are proposed. Solutions that involve offshore accounts these men would never access again. This is how Vance Sterling operates. Methodical, calculated, emotions surgically removed from every decision. He has survived 2 decades at the top of the most dangerous game in America, because he understands one fundamental truth. Attachment is a weapon your enemies will use to destroy you. And Vance Sterling has spent 20 years making sure no one has any weapons to use against him. But then something happens that will crack the foundation of everything he's built. The crash echoes through the estate like a gunshot. Not the reinforced door to his study being opened properly, shattered. The oak frame splinters as the door bursts inward with enough force to send security alarms shrieking through the house. Every head snaps toward the entrance. Vance's hand moves instinctively beneath his desk where the Glock rests. His 2 bodyguards draw weapons in synchronized motion, red laser sights painting the doorway. The 3 accountants across from him go pale, probably assuming this is how their meeting ends, with a rival family's hit squad. But when the intruder appears, every gun wavers. Because it's not assassins, not rivals, not police. It's a child. 8 years old, drenched from the rain. Her blonde hair hangs in soaked strands against a face streaked with tears and something darker. Terror that's carved itself so deep it might never wash away. Her red jacket is torn at the shoulder, The fabric ripped like someone tried to grab her, and she fought free. And she's in a wheelchair. Small hands grip the armrests, pushing herself forward with trembling determination. Each rotation of the wheels leaves wet tracks across the Persian rug that cost more than most people make in a year. She's sobbing, not the manipulative tears Vance has witnessed 1,000 times in negotiation rooms. These are raw, soul-destroying cries of a child who has run out of options and found one last thread of hope. The room freezes. Vance's bodyguards exchange confused glances, weapons still drawn but clearly uncertain how to handle a crying 8-year-old crashing a Mafia meeting. The accountants shrink back in their chairs, desperate to become invisible. But the little girl's eyes, brown and wide and filled with something Vance hasn't seen directed at him in decades, trust, sweep past every armed killer in that study and lock onto Vance Sterling himself. She knows exactly who he is. Somehow, impossibly, she knows, and she's chosen him. "Please," she gasps, her voice shattering on the word like glass. "Please, you have to help me. They took my mama. They took Mama Ilara, and they said they'll kill her if you don't." Her small fist opens. Dangling from her trembling fingers is a delicate gold chain. The locket at its end catches the lamplight, and Vance's entire world tilts on its axis. The crest engraved on that locket is unmistakable. The Sterling family crest. The same locket he placed around his sister's neck the night before her funeral, 20 years ago. The same locket that was supposed to be buried 6 feet underground in a cemetery Vance hasn't visited since the day he swore never to let anyone close enough to hurt him again. But here it is, gleaming in a child's rain-soaked hand. The Glock slips from Vance's fingers and clatters onto the mahogany desk. His lieutenants lean forward, sensing something seismic happening, but not understanding what. The little girl pushes her wheelchair closer, desperation overriding any fear of the armed men surrounding her. "They took my mama hostage," she whispers, holding out the impossible proof. "They took Mama Ilara, and they said only you can save her." 20 years. 20 years of carefully constructed walls. 20 years of refusing to feel anything that could be used against him. 20 years of believing his sister was dead, that the explosion that took her was payment for his sins, that he was better off alone. All of it shatters in the space between one heartbeat and the next. Vance Sterling has built an empire on the principle that family is weakness, that love is a liability, that the past should stay buried where it can't hurt you. But this 8-year-old girl in a wheelchair has just rolled into his fortress, carrying the ghost of everything he tried to forget. She's carrying proof that his sister, the only person who ever made him feel human, didn't die 20 years ago. She's alive, and she's in danger. Every man in that room watches Vance Sterling's face, waiting to see how the most ruthless crime boss in New Jersey will handle this unprecedented disruption. His reputation is built on being untouchable, unmovable, a man who shows mercy to no one. But as Vance looks down at this brave little girl who somehow navigated his security perimeter alone, in a wheelchair, through a rainstorm, because she believed he would help, something shifts in his chest. Something he thought died the day they lowered Ilara's empty coffin into the ground. You see, Vance Sterling wasn't always the cold, calculating machine that criminals and politicians fear. Once he was a brother who would have burned the world to protect his sister. Once he understood what it meant to love someone more than power, more than reputation, more than survival itself. But that was before the night everything he cared about was taken from him in fire and twisted metal. Before he learned that attachment was the deadliest weapon in his world. Before he built walls so high and thick that nothing and no one could ever hurt him again. 20 years of isolation. 20 years of believing it was better to feel nothing than to risk losing everything. And now this child, this impossibly brave little girl, has crashed through those walls with nothing but tears, a locket, and the name he spent 2 decades trying to forget. Ilara. What happens next will force Vance Sterling to make a choice he thought he'd never face again. His empire or his soul. His carefully constructed isolation or the family he thought was lost forever. The machine he's become or the man he used to be. And deep in his chest, beneath layers of scar tissue and calculated indifference, something that's been dead begins to stir. Because if Ilara is alive, if she's out there held hostage facing death, then everything Vance built his life around was a lie. And lies, unlike people, can be destroyed without consequence. What Vance discovers next will turn his entire empire inside out. But before we dive into the betrayal that's been hiding in plain sight for 20 years, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this ends. They called him the architect because Vance Sterling didn't just commit crimes. He engineered them with the precision of a man building cathedrals. Every detail calculated, every variable accounted for, every loose end tied off before it could unravel. His empire stretched from the docks of Newark to the penthouses of Manhattan, built on a foundation most men couldn't stomach. Absolute control through absolute isolation. The Alpine estate reflected this philosophy perfectly. Bulletproof windows that could withstand a .50 caliber round. Security cameras covering every angle, feeding into a server room that would make the NSA jealous. Staff vetted through background checks more thorough than presidential appointments. Even the landscaping was tactical. Sightlines clear, approach routes exposed, nowhere for threats to hide. Inside his study, Vance sat motionless as the 3 accountants across from him sweated through expensive suits. They'd been explaining for 20 minutes why skimming 15% off a shipment was actually a clerical error. Vance hadn't blinked once. At 48, he wore his reputation like the tailored suits he favored. Dark, impeccable, impossible to penetrate. Sharp cheekbones, beard trimmed to military precision, and eyes the color of December ice. The small X-shaped tattoo beneath his left eye drew focus. Made people wonder about the stories whispered in back rooms, one mark for each life he'd taken personally. Attachment is a weapon, he'd told his lieutenants once. The moment you care about something, your enemies know exactly where to aim. He'd learned that lesson in Blood and Fire 20 years ago, as one accountant stammered another excuse. Vance's hand moved absently toward his desk drawer, the locked one nobody was allowed to open. Inside, hidden beneath ammunition and emergency cash, was a single photograph. A young woman with his eyes and a smile that could light up rooms. Ilara, his sister, dead 20 years. The drawer clicked shut before anyone noticed. Some ghosts were meant to stay buried. The crash came like divine judgment, wood splintering, alarms shrieking, the carefully orchestrated meeting dissolving into chaos. Vance's hand found the Glock. His bodyguards drew weapons. Red laser sights painted the doorway as every man in the room prepared for war. But war didn't come. A child did. 8 years old, soaked to the bone, her blonde hair plastered against a face carved with terror. Her red jacket hung torn at the shoulder. Her small hands gripped the wheelchair's armrests, pushing forward with trembling determination that left wet tracks across the Persian rug. She was crying, not the calculated tears of manipulation, but the raw, desperate sobs of someone who'd run out of options and found one last impossible hope. Vance's bodyguards exchanged confused glances. The accountants shrank back. Nobody moved. The little girl's eyes swept past every weapon, every killer, every threat, and locked onto Vance. "Your Uncle Vance," she gasped, her voice breaking. "Mama showed me your picture. She said if anything bad happened, find you." Uncle Vance. The words hit harder than any bullet. Her fist opened, a golden locket swung from delicate fingers, the Sterling family crest catching lamplight like a ghost materializing from nowhere. Vance's world stopped. That locket. That locket. The one he'd placed around Alara's neck the night before they buried an empty coffin. The one that was supposed to be 6 feet underground for 20 years. The Glock clattered onto his desk. "They came to the house," the girl whispered, pushing closer despite the guns. "Men in masks. They hurt the guards and took Mama. She told me to run, to find you. She said only you could save her." Mama. The walls Vance had spent 2 decades building cracked down the center. "Who's your mama?" His voice came out strangled, foreign. The little girl held out the locket like it held every answer that mattered. "Mama Alara." 20 years ago, Vance Sterling stood in the rain watching them lower his sister into the ground. Alara had been 26, brilliant, compassionate, the only person who could make him laugh. The car bomb was meant for him. She died because she borrowed his vehicle to pick up his dry cleaning. He gave the eulogy with a voice like gravel, promised her he'd never let anyone close enough to hurt him again. He'd kept that promise until tonight. Now, Vance knelt beside Serafina's wheelchair, moving slowly, deliberately, treating her mobility aid with the respect it deserved. His bodyguards had cleared the room. Someone brought towels, dry clothes, hot chocolate. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Serafina. Sefi." Her voice was small, fragile. "Mama calls me her little warrior." "Tell me about Mama Alara." The story came in broken pieces. A safe house Sefi had never left. Homeschooling. No visitors, no outside contact. Mama said the world was dangerous, that Uncle Vance couldn't know about them because bad people would hurt him if they knew he cared. Vance's jaw tightened. 20 years. Someone had kept his sister prisoner for 20 years. Dimitri, his tech expert, one of 3 people Vance still trusted, examined the locket under magnification. "Boss, there's a data chip embedded in the engraving." The video played on Dimitri's laptop. Alara appeared on screen, older, worn, but unmistakably alive. "Vance, if you're seeing this, I'm so sorry." Her voice cracked. "They never killed me. They've kept me here for 20 years, and now they're making their move. Protect Sefi. She's all I have." The video cut to black. Vance stood perfectly still, his face carved from stone. But his hands curled into fists so tight, his knuckles went white. Someone had stolen 20 years from them both, and they were about to learn what the architect built when he stopped designing crimes and started engineering vengeance. Vance had 3 people in his life who knew about Alara before she died. 3 who had access to her locket, the resources to fake a car explosion, and the authority to make an entire crime family believe his sister's ash and memory. Marcus Kane, 18 years as head of security. Former Delta Force, tactical genius, The man Vance trusted to design every protection protocol. Julian Cross, financial officer, the wizard who laundered millions through legitimate businesses so clean, the IRS sent thank you notes. Isabel Voss, consigliere, former lover. The woman who'd held Vance the night after Alara's funeral and never asked questions when he stopped letting anyone close. Vance set his traps with surgical precision. He told Marcus that Sephi had mentioned a safe house in Newark. Told Julian it was Philadelphia. Told Isabel it was Atlantic City. Then he waited. Sephi refused to leave his side. "Mama said you keep promises," she'd whispered, small hand finding his. Her presence forced something in him to shift. He caught himself kneeling to speak at her eye level, moving furniture so her wheelchair had clear paths, explaining things patiently instead of issuing orders. She was teaching him how to be human again, one gentle interaction at a time. The traps worked. Dimitri intercepted communications within hours. Marcus, Julian, and Isabel, all three sending encrypted messages to unknown numbers. All three using the exact false information Vance had fed them. Then Dimitri found the deeper archive. Years of planning. Code named Sterling Protocol. Their voices, recorded in a conversation from 6 months ago. He's not the man who built this empire anymore. He's a ghost operating a machine. The code is wasted on him. The Starlight Code. 20 years of leverage, secrets, power, locked behind biometric authentication only Alara possessed. They'd kept his sister alive as a key to his kingdom. The betrayal didn't make Vance angry. It made him absolutely, terrifyingly calm. Think about the people you trust most in your life. Now imagine discovering they've been lying to you for 20 years. If that hits different, you're not alone. Drop a comment sharing your thoughts, and if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. This community is built on stories that make us feel something real. Sephi sat across from Vance in the study, hot chocolate cooling in her hands. She'd been watching him work through files for hours, her young face serious beyond her years. "What are they looking for?" she asked quietly. Vance looked at this 8-year-old who deserved honesty more than protection from ugly truths. Something called the Starlight Code. It's a digital ledger, a list of every secret, every transaction, every piece of leverage I've collected in 20 years. Bank accounts, blackmail material on judges and politicians, locations of hidden assets, evidence that could destroy half the criminal infrastructure on the East Coast. Why do they want it? Because it's locked. Military-grade encryption. The only way to open it is with a biometric scan. Your mama's retinal pattern and fingerprint. They've kept her alive all these years as a key. Sephi's grip tightened on her cup. What happens if they get it? They dismantle everything I built, or sell the information to people who'll use it to hurt innocent people caught in the crossfire. Dimitri entered without knocking, tablet in hand. "Boss, ransom demand just came through." The message was brief. "Bring the code to Pier 47 at midnight. Come alone. No tricks, or Alara dies." Vance studied the coordinates. Pier 47 was industrial wasteland, abandoned warehouses, clear sight lines, nowhere to hide. A perfect kill box. They'd take the code whether he arrived breathing or in a body bag. "It's a trap," Dimitri said unnecessarily. "Of course it's a trap." Sephi's small voice cut through the calculation. "Mama told me you were the bravest man she ever knew. She said you'd come for her, even if it was dangerous." Vance looked at this child, who'd navigated his security alone because she believed in him. 20 years ago, he would have walked through fire for Alara. Tonight, he'd walk through something worse. "Get the car ready," he told Dmitri. "I'm going to need my tactical team." Vance activated the failsafe in his office at 11 p.m. The biometric monitor implanted beneath his ribs, installed after an assassination attempt years ago, now served a new purpose. If his heart stopped, every file in the Starlight Code would scatter across the digital landscape like radioactive fallout. Rival families, FBI, DEA, media outlets. His empire would burn, but so would everyone who touched it. He'd also sent his original crew, men who'd served before Marcus, Julian, and Isabel ever entered the picture, to track Alara. They'd found her in 2 hours, locked in Vance's own Hoboken safe house, the one only his inner circle knew existed. The ultimate betrayal. They'd used his resources to cage his sister. Pier 47 sat dark and abandoned under a moonless sky. Vance arrived at midnight exactly, alone, carrying a brushed steel briefcase. His footsteps echoed across cracked concrete. They were waiting. Marcus stepped from the shadows first, tactical vest over civilian clothes, weapon drawn. Julian emerged next, nervous energy radiating off him like heat. Then Isabel, her face unreadable. Behind them, a dozen mercenaries with rifles trained on Vance's chest. "You actually came," Marcus said, almost disappointed. "You have something that belongs to me. We have a lot of things that belong to you." Isabel's voice was cold. "Your empire, your code, your future. You stopped deserving them 20 years ago. You became a monster, Vance." Julian's words came fast, defensive. "You stopped caring about anything but power. We built this empire for family, and you turned it into a machine." Vance set the briefcase down slowly. When he looked up, his eyes held the kind of emptiness that preceded executions. "You kept my sister in a cage for 20 years, used her daughter as bait, and you want to lecture me about family?" Thunder rumbled in the distance. "Open the case," Marcus ordered. Vance smiled. Cold, predatory, final. "Let's negotiate terms." Marcus raised his weapon. "Open the case or I give the order." "Go ahead." Vance's voice was conversational. "Pull the trigger. See what happens." "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Vance tapped his chest. Biometric monitor. Installed after the Colombo hit. If my heart stops, the Starlight Code uploads automatically to every rival family from here to Chicago. FBI, DEA, CNN, the New York Times. Julian's face went pale. "You're insane." "I'm thorough. You kill me, and every person in this pier, including the 3 of you, will be hunted by every criminal and law enforcement agency on the East Coast within the hour." Isabel's eyes narrowed, calculating. She saw the checkmate before the others did. Marcus grabbed his phone, desperate. "Then we kill Alara, right now. Go ahead. Call the safe house." Marcus dialed. The line rang once, twice. A voice answered, unfamiliar, professional. "Safe house secure. Package extracted. 0 hostiles remaining." Vance pulled out his own phone, turned the screen toward them. Live surveillance feed showed Alara being helped into an armored vehicle, his original crew surrounding her. Another feed showed Sefi safe in his estate study with Dmitri. "You didn't come here to surrender," Isabel whispered, realization dawning. "I came here to watch you realize you failed." The mercenaries lowered their weapons. One of them spoke up. We weren't paid to die for a bad plan. Marcus spun toward them. Hold your positions. The man's got a dead man's switch, the mercenary replied flatly. And you didn't mention that. Deal's off. Chaos erupted. Arguments, weapons redirecting, mercenaries backing toward exits. Vance melted into the shadows as gunfire cracked the night. His team would handle cleanup. He had family to get home to. By dawn, 3 bodies would be found in Pier 47's wreckage, not by Vance's hand directly, but by the inevitable collapse of their own betrayal. The architect had designed one final structure, their destruction. The Hoboken safe house sat quiet under falling rain. Vance's team had already swept the perimeter, 3 hostiles neutralized, no casualties on their side. Professional work. Vance walked through the courtyard alone, rainwater soaking through his jacket. His footsteps splashed through puddles that reflected nothing but darkness. Then he saw them. Alara stood beneath the overhang, one arm around Sephi's shoulders. She looked older, lines carved around her eyes, silver threading through dark hair, but unmistakably his sister. The same sharp cheekbones, the same way she held herself, protective and fierce. Their eyes met. 20 years collapsed into silence. Vance. Her voice broke on his name. Tears cut tracks down her face. They said if I ever contacted you, they'd kill you. I stayed silent to keep you alive. Every day, every single day, I thought about you, hoped you'd find me, but I was too afraid they'd hurt you. Vance crossed the distance between them. No words came. Words were inadequate for 20 years of stolen time. He pulled her into his arms and held on like she might disappear again. Alara sobbed against his shoulder, 2 decades of captivity, fear, and sacrifice pouring out. Vance's jaw tightened, eyes burning, but he didn't let go. When they finally separated, he knelt in the rain before Sephi. Water streamed down his face, mixing with something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in decades. You saved her, he said quietly. You saved me. Sephi's small hand touched his cheek. Are you going to leave us again? Vance looked at this impossibly brave child, then up at his sister who'd endured 20 years of hell to protect him. Never. The rain fell harder, washing away the architecture of isolation he'd built brick by brick. Some structures deserved to crumble. 20 years of isolation, shattered in one rainstorm. If you felt that reunion in your chest, you're part of something special here. Show some love by hitting the like button and drop a comment telling me, what's the one relationship in your life worth tearing down walls for? Let's finish this story together. 6 months later, the Sterling Syndicate looked different, smaller, cleaner. Legitimate businesses on the surface with a shadow network underneath. Protection only. No more predatory schemes that hurt innocent people caught in the machinery. Vance had burned it down to bedrock and rebuilt something he could live with. Every Sunday, he drove to the private estate he'd set up for Alara and Sephi. Heavily secured, but not a fortress. A home. The kind with laughter echoing through hallways and art projects scattered across kitchen counters. Today, Sephi had insisted on teaching him chess in the garden. Spring flowers bloomed around them while she maneuvered her wheelchair closer to the outdoor table. Your move, Uncle Vance. He studied the board. She'd trapped his king beautifully, exactly the kind of 3-move checkmate he'd taught her last week. Mama says you used to be really good at this, Sephi said, moving her knight into position. Vance smiled, genuinely smiled. the expression still unfamiliar on his face but getting easier each week. I got too focused on winning. Your mama had to remind me it's more fun when you play with people you love. Seffi grinned and tipped his king over. Checkmate, Vance laughed, a real laugh that startled birds from nearby trees. From the porch, Ilara watched them, tears streaming down her face, happy tears this time. Vance had spent 20 years believing attachment was weakness. That love was a weapon his enemies would use to destroy him. He'd built walls so high and thick that nothing could reach him. Not joy, not grief, not the messy, complicated beauty of being human. But that little girl in the wheelchair had taught him the truth. The only thing weaker than loving someone is being too afraid to try. Seffi reset the board. Again? Again, Vance agreed. And this time, he let her win on purpose. Now that you've seen how this story unfolds, I want to hear your thoughts. Join the conversation in the comments below and subscribe to be part of this family.